So this is a short little video to show you how to use the calculator on the MCA test. The calculator on the MCA test has a lot of nice features, some of which we won't really be using. Notice there are two buttons up at the top, scientific or graphing. It starts on scientific, and this is just sort of your normal calculator. You can do 5 plus 3 and get the answer. One thing to notice is that answer is up there, and so now if I start doing something else, it's going to use that answer right away. So if I hit times 2, it's going to take that answer that I got and multiply it by 2 and get 16. And so if you don't want that, if you don't want to use that answer, you have to go up here and clear it. You can work with negative numbers, and there are a couple different ways you can, a couple different orders you can work with negative numbers. You can type in a number and then realize, oh, I want that to be a negative. You hit this little plus minus button here. So now I have -6 plus 7, and that should give me 1. You can also type it in first. So if I want to do now, take that answer 1 and add -6 to it, I can hit 1 plus -6 and then hit equals, and I get the answer is -5. I can clear that. Over here on the side we've got a few functions, most of which we probably won't be using, but you might use the exponent buttons. So if I want to do 5 squared, I can hit 5 to the 2nd power, and it gives me the answer of 25. If I wanted to do 2 to the 3rd power, I can hit this one, 2 to the 3rd power, gives me 8. I can also do any exponent I want by hitting this x to the y button. So if I want 2 to the 5th power, I hit 2, and then this exponent button, and then 5, and I get 32. So those are some sort of handy buttons. One thing you will notice is that unfortunately there is no fraction button. So typically when you're dealing with fractions on this sort of calculator, you just have to use the division sign and convert it to decimals. And so if you want to deal with the fraction 5/8, you divide 5 by 8 and get the decimal version of that. You also notice they have parentheses, and so we can do problems with parentheses in there. So we can do 2 plus 3 and then put a 5 there, and it knows that you're supposed to multiply. And so it does the 2 plus 3 first, gets 5, and then does 5 times 5 and gives you the 25. And so that's sort of the basics of the scientific portion of the calculator. Sort of your normal everyday math operations. When you switch over to the graphing piece, you can now graph some equations. Even though it says expressions there, we're really graphing equations, and you can graph up to 4 equations. So maybe I want to graph lines, so I want to graph 2x minus, and notice this time I'm not clicking it over here, I'm just typing it on my keyboard, and that works fine. So 2x minus 5. And I can just hit graph, and I can see a picture of that. I have quite a bit of control over what I'm going to see on my picture. Maybe this isn't what I want to see, and so there are a couple ways you can change what you see on the graph. One is you can just set the window by hand, and so right now it's set up to go from -5 to 5, and so maybe I want to see from -10 to 10, and so I'm just going to use my keyboard, type -10, click down here, +10, click here, -10, click here, +10. This trace step size has to do with the resolution on the screen. You shouldn't need to mess with that. The X scale and the Y scale control how many little marks they put on the axes. So let's just to see this how it looks different. I'm going to change my X scale to 5. I'm going to leave my Y scale at 1. And so now when I hit graph, notice is now going from -10 to 10. There's a mark every 5 on the x-axis. On the y-axis, I had the y scale set at 1, but apparently they decided it was going to be too crowded, and so they're actually just doing every 2 on that. You can also move the graph around once you have it graphed using these arrows. I'm on scroll, and I can use the left arrow and sort of move to the left, and If I want to see a little bit lower, I can hit the down arrow, and so I can sort of move around. You can also click the trace button. When you click the trace button, a little blue dot shows up on the graph, and up in the corner here it shows me what the coordinates of that point are. So right now the dot is at 0, -5. And now I can use the left and right arrows to move along. And so I can see a bunch of different points, and if I can start to see, well, it looks like it's crossing the x-axis somewhere between 2.29 and 2.57, and we could figure that out algebraically where it's crossing the x-axis, but now I can see approximately where it is just by looking at the graph. I can also zoom in on that a little bit, so I can hit the zoom in button, and then I can use the trace button, and I can get an even better idea of where it's crossing the y-axis. It seems to be right about 2.48. A good guess might be it's happening at 2.5, and we could confirm that again algebraically. Similarly to using trace, we can get a table of the graph, and when I look at the equation, I should say, a table for the equation. And so when I hit table, I just get a list of x and y values. And so it's just going up by 1. You can control where the table starts, so maybe I want to see some higher values of x, so I'm going to start at 11 and hit apply. And then I can just sort of scroll through the table by hitting the previous and the next buttons. And so it's giving me the x values and the y values. I can see here again the y values changing from -1 to 1. It's crossing the x-axis somewhere between 2 and 3. The other handy thing about the graphing is you can see 2 graphs at the same time, or up to 4 graphs at the same time. So I'm going to do -3x plus 1, and now I'm going to look at my window. I sort of messed it up as I was scrolling around, so I'm going to go back to -10 to 10 and -10 to 10, maybe do a scale of 2, 2. Then I hit graph, and I see my 2 graphs. And now when I hit trace, you'll see that I'm going on that first line again, just like I was before. It's a blue dot. And notice it says y1 here. That's telling me that I'm on the first equation, 2x minus 5. When I go back here and hit trace, and now I hit the up or down arrow, now notice the blue dot is on the other line, and I'm getting points from y equals 2. So from the other line, and I could sort of scroll around and try and figure out approximately where these graphs cross. I could say, well, it's looking pretty close there. I can zoom in and get a pretty good idea of where those 2 lines are intersecting. I think that's about it. I had fun exploring the graphing calculator.